On May 24th, 2015 at 9:27 a.m., an airplane made contact with the control center in Marseille. The plane was an Airbus A320, owned by German Wings Airlines. It was departing from Barcelona, Spain to Düsseldorf, Germany. Everything was normal. At 9:39, 3 minutes after takeoff, the captain made contact with the control center and provided them with all the information about the altitude and speed they were cruising at. The control center checked with the captain about his route and all was well. But a few minutes later, something strange happened. The control center saw that the airplane's altitude had decreased to 3,000 feet, which is 2,000 feet lower than it should have been. But the problem was that the decline continued for the following 6 minutes. They tried to contact the plane numerous times using new communication frequencies and through the French air defense system, and even tried communicating with it from another plane that was nearby, but each time there was no response from the German plane. At 49 minutes past the hour, they lost contact with the plane and it disappeared from the radar. French air traffic controllers issued a distress call. Directly, they reckoned all the passengers and crew on the plane were in great danger and needed immediate assistance. At exactly 9:41, the German plane collided with a mountain and was completely destroyed. What exactly happened? Why did this flight change the rules of global aviation? On a distant mountain, and due to the difficulty in reaching the crash site, they had to bring in the emergency helicopter crew. The plane was completely destroyed and turned into small fragments widely spread. There should be a recorder in the captain's cockpit or another one in the plane for the entire journey. These were found during the first week of search and they were broken. However, the investigators working on the case managed to retrieve the recording data. With that, they understood what exactly happened. This was not an accident, it was actually a crime. The plane was hijacked, but not by criminals or terrorists. Wait and see. After the plane is stable at its required altitude post-takeoff, the captain left the cockpit to use the bathroom exactly at 39 minutes. While he was in the bathroom, the altitude changed no earlier than 9:34 minutes. The captain returned from the bathroom and requested to enter the cockpit, but his assistant didn't open the door. As he stood outside the door, he began to understand what was happening. His assistant was hijacking the plane. The problem is, there is no way for him to enter. You may ask, is it possible there's absolutely no way for him to get in? Not even by breaking the door. Let me explain why. After the attacks of 2001, cockpit doors were redesigned for the safety of the planes and pilots from any potential risks, and anyone who might have intentions of hijacking. To enter the cockpit, one of the flight crew members must call the cabin using the intercom and press a square button on the door keypad. This rings a bell in the captain's quarters, and the captain can then unlock the door and let you in. The other option is that the flight crew have an emergency code that they can use if needed. There were fears, or in an emergency situation, someone in the control room might get in. If in this case you enter the emergency code, it will turn on a timer for 30 seconds and then the door lock will open for only 5 seconds, which also means that entering this way is not an easy thing now. As you all have in mind, like maybe there were criminals on the plane and they caught one of the crew and forced him to give them the emergency code to enter the cockpit. Let me tell you that they calculated that the pilots can cancel the opening feature by code, and this is what the co-pilot did. He locked the door and blocked all their ways to get in, changed the plane's altitude immediately, and made it descend gradually. The captain of the plane was standing outside and did not know what he wanted to do. At 9:39 minutes, the recorder in the cockpit picked up the sound of violent and strong beating on the door. He was trying to get in with all his might, but the door was impossible to open because it is designed to face all the hijackers and criminals and prevent anyone from entering. And at the last minute, all the passengers, the crew of the plane and the captain realized that they were going to die, as unfortunately, no one survived from this accident. 144 passengers, 4 of the crew, the pilot and the co-pilot all died. Among the passengers were a whole class of students from the captain's school. He was 34 years old, had 2 kids, and had ample experience in flying. In his final moments, he was trying to save the plane and the passengers. The question is, why did the co-pilot do this? The co-pilot was 27 years old. Since he was young, he loved to fly a lot. He joined the Lufthansa company's aviation academy right after he finished high school. But after a few months of study, he quit. He was suffering from depression. He treated the issue with a variety of medications and spent a few months visiting a psychiatrist. After that, he was able to get a report stating he had recovered and his condition was perfect. In fact, a few months later, they returned his student pilot license and a medical certificate stating he was fine and ready to fly. He continued his training until he ran into a problem with the academy where he was studying. They wanted him to do practical training. All students who want to do practical training must fill out a request from the Federal Aviation Administration. In this request, he stated that he had never been diagnosed with any mental illnesses before. This was a lie and they knew it. Lying on an FAA request is punishable by imprisonment and it immediately ends your future in the flying profession. But the FAA gave him a second chance. He admitted to them that he had depression and they agreed. He was doing practical training and things went well in 2013. He joined the German airline Germanwings, but around this time, depression came back. He would always complain that he felt like he's going to go blind, visiting many eye doctors and neurologists. He complained to them that he continually saw halos, stars, lights, and insects flying. After they conducted multiple tests, they did not find anything and told him that his problem is psychological. Initially, they diagnosed him with psychosis and obsessive illness and advised him to see a psychiatrist. Instead, he returned to the doctor who helped him the first time and took the same antibiotics from him like before. He resumed working, traveling, and flying, and life continued. 4 days before the accident, he was researching on his computer to understand the command room mechanism of an Airbus A. When they were on their first flight from Dusseldorf to Barcelona, he tried the landing settings for a few seconds while the captain was out of the room. On their way back to Dusseldorf, he used the settings that he had experimented with, and the plane crashed. After this incident, see what happened. Every year, pilots are asked to undergo health and psychological tests, but they didn't focus much on mental health. The biggest problem was that if a psychiatrist saw a pilot again and knew that he had a history of instability or depression, they would have grounded him. This pilot has disorders, his situation is questionable and dangerous. He was not informing the airlines of his normal situation. The psychiatrist does not leak information and secrets of a patient, but in cases like this, they're allowed to tell the airlines. They can tell the airlines because the topic is a big responsibility and involves people's lives. When they saw the doctors that the co-pilot used to go to, the doctor said that we gave him the room to discuss his situation, that he is not qualified for the flying job. Imagine, they said they gave him the space that he talks about his case that he is not qualified for the job of flying. He talks about his situation, that he is not qualified for the work of an airline pilot and they know he is sick. More importantly, the doctors have said that having a mental disorder does not mean that he is a killer. As a doctor, I can't speculate if certain individual might be a killer or not because he has some disorders. You also need to be aware that according to the law in most countries in the world, there is a great confidentiality of patient information. This confidentiality is protected by law, especially in Germany. Okay, so how can a problem like this be solved? Could they change the law in all countries around the world and force all doctors to disclose patient information if he is going to work in airlines? That would be difficult. So the solution was as follows. Let me talk. Indeed, the solution was superb and it'll be nearly impossible for such accidents to occur again. The proposal put forward by the Aviation Safety Agency was that 2 people should always be present in the control room under any circumstance. This means that if the captain leaves, 2 assistants should remain inside. And if an assistant leaves, the captain stays inside with another assistant. I think the probability of 2 persons having mental disorders at the same time and sharing the same ideas is extremely low. The bizarre thing is, Lufthansa, the airline company, and the academy where the co-pilot who caused the disaster graduated from, gradually stopped discussing this matter and reverted to the old system of having only 2 people in the cockpit. Following the accident, Germanwings changed their name to Eurowings, so that if you ever travel with them, you would be aware of the history of the company you are flying with. In the end, Lufthansa compensated the victims' families with sums of money, but is the monetary compensation they paid enough? I believe that the victims' families endured loss